Tonight, we travel back into the misty forests and windswept hills of ancient Europe, to a world filled with oak trees, sacred fires, and whispers of strange ceremonies. These are the mysterious druids, the priests, judges, healers, and storytellers of the Celtic peoples. For centuries, their ways have fascinated and unsettled us, and much of what we think we know about them comes wrapped in legend and fragments. The Druids did not write down their secrets. Their wisdom, rituals, and teachings were passed by word of mouth, guarded carefully from outsiders. To the Romans, who eventually conquered Celtic lands, the Druids were both dangerous and strange, figures of power who seemed to control life and death through hidden rites. And from these outside descriptions, we catch glimpses of rituals that seem, even to this day, bizarre. So, as you settle into bed, let's drift gently into their world, where nature was alive with spirits, where every tree might hold a soul, and where rituals connected humans with gods in ways that now feel strange, mysterious, and sometimes unsettling. The Druids lived among the Celtic peoples of Gaul, Britain, and Ireland, beginning long before the Roman conquest. They were not a separate tribe, but rather a class, respected and feared. To be a druid meant years of training, learning the cycles of the stars, the secrets of healing plants, and the sacred laws of their people. Some say training could last 20 years, all memorized without writing. Imagine holding the myths, the genealogies, and the laws of an entire people in memory alone. Druids were walking libraries, storytellers who carried history inside their minds. But they were also judges, deciding disputes, and priests, leading rituals that tied the community to the gods. Unlike the grand temples of Rome or Greece, Druids performed their rituals in nature, in sacred groves, beside rivers, or atop lonely hills. To them, the natural world was the temple. An oak tree, with its strong trunk and wide branches, was more holy than marble columns. And here, in the forest shadows, the Druids carried out rituals that outsiders described as bizarre and sometimes frightening. Roman writers tell us that Druids practiced human sacrifice. They claimed that criminals, and sometimes innocents, were placed inside huge wooden effigies, the so-called wicker men, and burned alive as offerings to the gods. Was this real, or Roman propaganda meant to paint their enemies as savages? Historians still debate. But the image of fire glowing against the night, with chants rising from the grove, has haunted the imagination ever since. Other rituals were less bloody, but still strange to Roman eyes. Druids observed the stars carefully, linking celestial patterns to human fate. They studied the flight of birds, the whisper of the wind through oak leaves, the flow of rivers, reading omens in the smallest natural signs. To them, every detail of nature could speak if you knew how to listen. One of the most famous rituals described comes from Pliny the Elder, a Roman writer. He tells us of druids who, dressed in white, would climb oak trees to gather mistletoe with a golden sickle. The plant was believed to have magical powers, to heal disease, to cure infertility, to protect against poison. The ritual was solemn and strange. Sacrificial animals were offered. Prayers were whispered as the mistletoe was caught in white cloth, never allowed to touch the ground. For For the Druids, this humble plant was not a decoration for midwinter festivities, but a sacred link to the gods. Archaeology adds its own whispers. Across Celtic lands, carved stone heads appear again and again. Severed heads were preserved, displayed on city gates, even buried in sacred sites. The Druids, it seems, believed the head was the seat of the soul, a container of power. Some Roman accounts describe rituals where the heads of fallen enemies were offered to the gods or kept as trophies. To us, this feels unsettling. But for the Druids, perhaps it was a way of capturing the spirit, holding on to courage or wisdom, or keeping balance with the unseen world. Not all rituals were dark. Druids were healers, turning to herbs, roots, and the natural world for cures. They brewed potions from plants like vervain and mistletoe. They may have performed rituals to bless water, turning springs into sacred places where the sick could be healed. They also practiced divination, rituals to glimpse the future, sometimes by watching the smoke of a fire or by listening to the cries of sacrificial animals. They tried to read the will of the gods. To their communities, this was not bizarre, but necessary. Life was uncertain, and rituals gave a sense of control, a way to prepare for what lay ahead. It is important to remember that most of what we know comes from outsiders. Romans, who saw the Druids as enemies, and later Christian writers who painted them as pagans to be feared. How much is truth, and how much is exaggeration? Perhaps some rituals were indeed bloody, but perhaps others, described as bizarre, were simply unfamiliar to foreign eyes. To the Druids themselves, these rituals were not strange. They were the heartbeat of their world. The grove, the fire, the head, the mistletoe, all were part of a living cosmos where humans and gods, animals and trees, the stars and the rivers were woven into one. With the coming of Rome, the Druids were hunted, their groves cut down, their rituals outlawed. Julius Caesar himself described them in his writings, both fascinated and fearful. By the 1st century CE, the power of the Druids faded, surviving only in whispers and fragments, later transformed by legend and folklore. And yet, even now, the word Druid carries mystery. Their bizarre rituals, half remembered, half imagined, linger like shadows in the forest. They remind us of a world where the boundary between natural and supernatural was thin, and where every tree and stone might hold a story. So tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine the glow of a sacred fire in the distance, the rustle of leaves in an oak grove, the soft chant of voices in the night. The Druids and their rituals may seem bizarre to us, but they were part of a deep human attempt to find meaning in the world, in life, in death, in the mysteries of nature. Sleep gently, with the thought that even in the strangest rituals, people long ago were searching for the same thing we still seek today, a connection to something larger than ourselves. Thank you for joining this journey into the bizarre rituals of the Druids. If you'd like to hear more strange and soothing tales from the past, remember to subscribe. There are many more bedtime stories waiting in the shadows of history.